Hey everyone, it's JT and welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything school didn't about job search and career growth. And today we're going to be talking about 3 tips that you can use to really have a better relationship with your boss, how to build a stronger, more productive, more successful relationship for your boss. This is something that I've been teaching for many years. And I really enjoy this subject because I think when people realize how much power they have in this relationship and how much more they could be doing to build an ideal relationship with their boss, the sky's the limit for your career. It's so important that your boss appreciates you and values you and sees the future potential in you. And that's what this is about today. So get ready for that. As always, we love to give you a lot of free resources, and there'll be 2 resources that I'll be referencing here today, which you can get for free over at the Work It Daily site, and the team is putting those links up right now. They are very popular quizzes that we use to help you determine not only some things about yourself, but as you'll see here today, help you determine some things about your boss, your manager, so that you can, again, customize your approach with them to build a stronger and better relationship. And of course, after that, I'll be taking your questions live, so get ready. There'll be plenty of time to do that as well. Okay. All right, then let's get started. Again, another topic that I just love so much today. So the first thing I want you to know is that there's a term for this that we're going to teach you today. It's a very vital skill, and it's called managing up. You need to know how to manage up in your career. And that simply means, if you think about it, it means managing the people above you. Your boss, your boss's boss, the C-suite, whoever it is. And people are often confused by that. They say, wait a minute, JT, isn't management down, right? They manage me. Well, if you want to think of it that way, you can, but that's very limiting. When you realize, again, how much power and influence you have over the relationship, and you learn the techniques to help you manage up, you are going to see a lot more opportunities, a lot more success, and most importantly, a lot more satisfaction in your career. And to me, that last one is the most important. You want to like what you do every day. You want to feel good about the work you do every day. Having an ideal relationship with your boss is a key component to that. So what does it look like? I told you we're going to break it down today into 3 areas. Well, let's start with tip number 1. When it comes to building a better relationship with your boss, you have to master working with your manager's preferred communication style. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you spend any time with us at Work It Daily, I know my Work It Daily members know this, there are 4 main styles of communication in the workplace. And, you're probably a little bit of each of these, but everyone tends to have a dominant style. And this is the style that your colleagues, your boss sees. And guess what? They all have styles as well. So while it's important that you understand your communication style and its strengths and weaknesses, it's equally important to understand the communication style of the people around you so that you can build stronger relationships and really speak to them in a way that they appreciate. Now, as you can see here, there's 4 major styles called commander, contemplator, energizer, and empathizer. And the way these are determined, and it's a quick 20-question quiz that you take that helps you figure out your style. It's based on 2 axes. So it's how tactful you are versus how direct you are. And it's how expressive you are versus how controlled or reserved you are. And depending on where you fall on these axes, you'll come out dominant in one of the styles. Now, I'm going to give you a little hint. I would say a good 80% of the time, managers, bosses tend to fall into either the energizer or the commander traits. So those 2 styles. And the reason for that is that out of the very nature of being a manager and being held accountable for results, they tend to have more of a sense of urgency, which makes them more direct because they have to get results. Now, an energizer is going to be faster paced and more to the point, but they tend to be more expressive and use more emotion, or like the name says, energy. Whereas a commander is probably going to come across a bit more serious, again, very direct, but all business, less emotion, more fact, and be very driven, right? Commander. I mean, think about it. We talk about, being in the military, and you have commanders in charge, right? There's a reason for that. So about 80% of the time we see people in management. That is not to say that the other 2 styles don't pop up in management. It's just they tend to be lesser for a couple of reasons. One, it's that they both are more tactful, therefore will go at a slower pace. They don't want to offend people. They'll take their time. They want to get things right. They don't have that same sense of urgency. On the empathizer side, they're very much about building relationships and making sure that people everyone feels happy and satisfied. And that can't always be the case when you're a manager. So they tend to not enjoy managing because they don't like to let people down and they don't like to create kind of uncomfortable situations. And contemplators don't always love the management role because they really like to cross their T's and dot their I's and get something right and take the time to do that. And when somebody's pushing you to make a quick decision, that takes them out of their comfort zone as well. So that's why we see those two classifications less often in management. But again, doesn't mean you won't see it. So now when you think about that and you understand that, you might be going, well, I think I know what my boss is, but I'm not sure. Well, here's the key. Remember I said this is all about you managing up. All of these, their strengths create their weaknesses. And so this is the same axis, but relabeling it with some terms that feel probably a bit more negative. So if you see the axes there, procrastinators versus pushers. So if your boss, if you feel or get the impression your boss tends to push a bit more, push things forward, then they're going to fall on that right side. And then when you look at pleasers versus planners, you can see that the pleasers are in the top part and the planners are in the bottom. So think about your boss right now. Everybody take a minute. Think about your boss or a past boss. Maybe let's think about a boss that you struggled to work with. You felt like you couldn't get on the same page with this boss. Ask yourself, based on this more direct or negative explanation of the styles, which one do you think your boss was? And I bet a lot of you are going to say, okay, definitely an energizer, really like push things forward, wanted to make everybody happy, but kind of real hustle mentality. Or definitely a commander, was really serious and really intense and all about business and getting things done. Well, then you can see which one they were. Also, maybe they were an empathizer or a contemplator. Maybe you're saying, gee, no, the person was not getting to business fast enough, not getting things done fast enough to my liking, and tended to just be so worried about everybody without thinking about the business. Well, that's an empathizer. And then the contemplator, you might be saying, yeah, that boss was just so hard to read. He or she never talked a lot, took a lot of time to make decisions, was really quiet to themselves, was really hard, again, to get a read on that boss. Well, again, that would be a contemplator. So everybody take a style of a boss that you struggle to work with. And now ask yourself, which style are you? What you will find some of the time is that the manager you have the hardest time with was your polar opposite. And the way to know your polar opposite is to look diagonally across. So empathizers, your polar opposite is the commander. And think about that. Doesn't that make sense? They're on completely opposite axes on both areas. So commanders are pushing and planning, whereas empathizers are procrastinating and pleasing. Flip it around with energizers and contemplators. Energizers are pushers and pleasers. Contemplators are planners and procrastinators. So this is where that disconnect can happen. And my advice to all of you is that once you figure out which one your boss is and which one you are, understand that you are a business of one and your boss is the client. Your boss is buying your services. So anytime you have a customer, I'm not saying that the customer is always right, but the intention, since the customer is paying the bill, is to make the customer as happy as possible. And in this case, it means thinking about how you can adjust your communication style to make your boss happier. So let's give you some examples. If you're an empathizer, as much as you want to sit and talk shop and ask a lot of personal questions and try to build relationships with people, that might not be what your boss wants. Don't expect your boss every time you sit down with her or him to ask you about your day and your family and your pets and your plans for the weekend. That's not what they're about, especially if they're a commander. Instead, save that for your coworkers, but go in and be all business with your boss and know that it's totally okay. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean they don't. So you go in, you give them what they need and you get out, right? And that's something they're going to appreciate. Energizers. Let's say you're a contemplator. This can be really hard for you, but a really simple thing to do is to show just a little bit more emotion, smile more. It can be as simple as smiling more to your energizer boss to make them feel like, okay, he or she's happy, because they're always reading you. And when you don't have any facial expressions, they're assuming the worst. So you can just smile more to your boss and try to be a little bit more upbeat and energetic so that they can feel that energy and that will make them happy, right? And then if you have an empathizer boss, well, then you need to be more caring. You ask more personal questions, you take a personal interest in them, and you build a relationship with them. And with the contemplator manager, you're calmer. You slow your voice tone down. You make sure that you do all of your homework and you give them all of the information, right? In a very thoughtful way. Again, this is about responding to the boss and managing up to their communication style so that the two of you can connect better. Awesome. All right. So there's the first one. Go take that quiz. It'll really help you. Tip number 2, identify the preferred workplace personas your boss believes are needed to be good at your job. So again, this is a quiz that we developed over at Work It Daily. After many years of research and being both an HR and then a career coach, I was able to recognize that there were 8 classic workplace personas, meaning these are the ways that people like to provide value or do work. And all of us tend to have 2 or 3 dominant personas that we put together and that we use together in order to create value on the job. We can be a little bit of all of these, but most of the time there are certain aspects we prefer to be and certain ones that we don't like as much. And so our quiz will let you tell you where your strong suits are. What you need to do is ask yourself and figure out through your working with your boss, which styles they prefer for the job. So something that you could do with your boss is to, first of all, take this quiz and then print out the results and sit with your boss and say, when you think about this job that I do and you think about exceeding expectations for you, which 3 of these traits, these types of ways to support you and add value, do you think are most important that I need to be the best at on this job? And really quickly, you're going to help yourself understand what that boss is looking for. Because you could even ask your boss to rank these and say, here's the definitions of each one. Tell me which one of these 8 do you think is most important to do this job successfully, second most important, third most important, all the way down to 8, the last place, least important. Ask your boss to do that. It's a really fun exercise. And it gets your boss thinking about how they define value, how they decide if you're a great employee or not. So if they're willing to tell you that, now you can make sure that your skill sets are aligned and that you're showcasing that you're doing these things that they prefer. And that's really, really important, right? Because if you are, let's say you're in an account management role. So your job is to take existing clients and make sure that the existing client is really, really happy. So maybe you're assuming that the key to being great in this job is that you need to do a lot of research. So you're a researcher. You need to build a lot of things for the client, and you need to be, like a warrior. You need to be really passionate about the brand. And so here you are doing your job and you're really passionate about the brand and you keep doing your homework and coming up with these ideas of ways to help the customer. But meanwhile, your boss is like, no, this job is about client relations. And so you really need to be a super connector. I need to know that you can bond with this customer, and you need to be an educator. You need to be able to articulate to them and help them understand how to use our product better. And you need to be an optimizer. You need to be able to make sure that whatever the customer is doing, they're doing it in the most efficient manner possible so that we save money on the whole account management process. Well, those are entirely different things. So you might be thinking you're crushing your job. Meanwhile, your boss is like, she's okay. He's doing all right. Wouldn't you rather know that your boss absolutely loves the way that you're doing your job, the way that you're creating value? And it comes down to them labeling and helping you understand what the dominant personas are for the job. Okay. That way too, when you're talking to your boss, you can really talk about how you got things done in a way that supports these so that they know, hey, I heard you. I heard you what it takes to be successful in this job. And I'm trying really hard to exceed your expectations. That's a real sign of respect. And it makes managers so happy. I can tell you as a manager, I can just look at an employee now and know what their predominant styles are. My staff now, I can tell you the top styles of each of my staff. I can also tell you that I like their dominant skills. They would not be in these jobs if they didn't have those dominant skill sets. I respect and believe that they're each crushing it because of that. Have I had people in the past who their way of doing work and what I needed in the role were different? Absolutely. Did I take it personally and think there was something wrong with them? Absolutely not. Because of this work, I understood that that's just the way they like to work, and what I needed was different. No hard feelings. It just wasn't a match. So I either needed to show them, hey, these are the skill sets I need you to showcase and deliver on, or this isn't going to work out. No hard feelings. You're a great person, but this isn't a match. And it's really nice because it can help you figure out, one, are you even in the right job? But two, how to get that raise, get that promotion, really become a standout candidate for your boss. So important stuff to know and understand. All right, now we're going to go to tip number 3 for managing up, and that is focusing in on taking specific, what we call headache tasks off your boss's plate. This is so vital and so key. I can't even begin to stress it, especially today with what we have going on today, where so many businesses are contracting and companies are saying, who are the most essential employees in our organization? Well, one of the ways that a manager decides that is they ask themselves, who's doing jobs that if they were eliminated, that work would come back on me? And whose job would I not want to come back on me? That's literally how managers think. Because the manager's busy doing other things. And when they have to do layoffs, that work is coming back. Now they can either redistribute the work to other people, other staff members, or it might come back on them. So a real secret to success, a way to stay employed, stay favorable with a boss, is to look for those jobs that you do that your boss would not want back. And this is what I mean by being a headache. If it's a headache to that manager, if it's a time suck to that manager, they dread doing it and you take it off their plate, bonus points, huge bonus points. And that's a wonderful way to manage up. In fact, I love when people say that, and I learned to say it very early on in my career. I would go in as I was starting a relationship with a manager. First of all, I would do my job really well, figure out their communication style, how they like to be spoken to, figure out the workplace personas, and make sure I was doing the work the way they wanted. So when I start to see them approving and saying I'm doing a good job, then I go in at next level and I say, okay, I've got my workload under control. What can I take off your plate? What's a headache that you have right now? Or sometimes the boss wouldn't even see it was a headache, but would be complaining about it or frustrated with something. And I knew that I could take it off their plate or I could build something better. So I would go in and say, I know that this has been a source of frustration for you. I have the bandwidth and I have an idea of how to do this. Can I take that off your plate? It is so much easier for a boss to do that when you go in and volunteer. And I cannot begin to express how wonderful it feels, because managers don't expect that. They don't expect employees to anticipate their needs and actually look to help them out. I mean, just look at the dynamic. The way it works now is we're all very focused on managers taking care of their employees, which they should, not saying they shouldn't. But with that responsibility usually comes the assumption that your management will go unappreciated. And so when someone turns around and looks at you and says, what can I take off your plate? I see this is a headache for you. Let me do that. And allowing, when they offer and allowing it, it's like a weight off your shoulders as a manager, and you don't forget it and you appreciate it and you also don't want it back. So this is another way for you to manage up and also really start to improve the chances that you're an essential employee. So if things start to shift around, you're not going to be going anywhere. Does that make sense to everyone? So important that we do this. So those are my 3 tips to managing up. They're not hard. They're not hard. And as you start to do this and get the hang of it, it becomes second nature and you realize how important managing up. So here's my final piece of advice before I take your questions. Please remember that being a boss isn't easy. And the more you can put yourself in your manager's shoes and understand their communication style, understand the workplace personas they want you to use in the job, and identify ways to take things off their plate, the better off you will be. Absolutely, positively. Especially if you want to be a boss someday. This is a great way for you to learn and understand by really paying attention and trying to help your boss and managing up in the process. Okay? Excellent. All right. So there were those tips. We are going to get right into questions today. So if you have questions, please pop them in there and the team will put them up there for me. Don't forget, The quizzes I mentioned today, they're free resources. It doesn't take you long to complete the quizzes. Head on over. The links are right there. You can get instant access, figure out your communication style, your workplace preferences, but also get that information to be able to sit down with your boss and say, which ones are you and how can we work better together, right? Be proactive. Don't assume that it's your manager's job to do this. Don't assume that. You should be the one being proactive. You should be managing up. I promise you it'll pay off. Okay? Awesome. All right, team. So let's get down to it. We're going to start off with a question from YouTube by David. How do I use the low scores on the Career Decoder quiz? My high scores are researcher, educator, builder. My very low skills are super connector and optimizer, and visionaries at 15. Okay. So David, what this tells me is that from a super connector and optimizer standpoint, super connector, you do not enjoy having to spend time talking and entertaining people. That's not your comfort zone. You don't want to sit there and talk to total strangers, try to get a bunch of people to talk with one another, spend a lot of your time talking to others. You would rather, as a researcher, educator, builder, you like to have your head down, work independently, be given a task to create, and to execute on that. That's your thing. The other thing that's low is optimizers. So you are more about researching, creating something new as opposed to fixing something broken. So people who are optimizers tend to love problems, existing problems, and how to improve on something that's already there. For you, it's about building something new. And then visionary at 15%, that's not a low score. It's not a super high score. It just means that you have some sense of being able to see ideas and create ideas, but it's not the number one thing you want to do. So it's a good trait to have, the fact that you're a researcher, educator, builder. That kind of ties into the fact that you're somebody who can come up with a solution, create an elegant solution, but you're not so much going to want to fix something that's existing. Does that make sense? Hopefully. All right. So next question is on LinkedIn from Phil. How do you ensure your boss doesn't take the credit for work you've done on behalf of the organization without bypassing them and going direct to their superior? That is an awesome question, Phil. So one of the things that I like to do with people that we coach inside Work It Daily when they're having this kind of problem is teach them how to set meetings with their boss that makes it the boss's idea to include them in the recognition, right? So you might sit down, for example, Phil, let's say you're the boss and I know that you might take credit for my work. I'll probably set a meeting with you and say, okay, Phil, so I know you're going to be presenting this information at corporate. What else can I put together for you so that you have all the information you need when you present? So, and they'll give you that information, say, fabulous, and say, Phil, I couldn't do this without you, but it really means a lot to me if they will know that I played a role in this. Is there a way for you to be able to include and at least give me partial credit for this? Because that's something that really means something to me. I really value it as an employee. So I was wondering if there was a way, could my name be on the document, or would you be able to reference the work that I did? It would mean so much to me if you would include me in that. Who says no to that? You're asking for this favor to be included. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going, why am I asking as a favor? Obviously, I should be included. I get it, but that's not what we're doing here, folks. We're managing up. If you know that this is a boss that might unknowingly take the credit and not remember to mention you, then you have to get creative and politely ask and let them know what it means for you to be included. That way, it sort of guilts them into it. And if they don't do it, you've gone on record saying it was important to you. So if it's not done and this person does take the credit, then it gives you the right that as you're talking to other people to say, I was really disappointed. This was important to me. I was a part of this and I didn't get recognized. I feel so disappointed. So what that does is create opportunities for other people to pass that feedback along that you were part of that solution, but not included in the recognition. Does that make sense? So always work with your boss first. Ask your boss for this privilege, right? For this favor. And then when that doesn't work, you can start to use that as the foundation to open up the conversation and get the word out. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Over on LinkedIn, Arizu says, what if the managers feel intimidated or judged by this exercise? So it all comes down to the way that you present this. If you go in and you say, you know what, I really want to do a better job of connecting with you. So I need to know your communication style and I need to know how you prefer me to work. Well, that's not going to go over very well, right? The whole point of this is for you to at least try to self-identify a little bit as to what the style is of your boss. So if you know that your boss is an energizer, you're going to go in and you're going to say, I'm really excited. I was studying on how to be a better employee and specifically how I can build a better relationship with my boss because I really like working with you and I want to make sure that you like working with me. And so they had this very cool exercise that they want you to do. Do you think we could schedule some time? It's probably only going to take 20 minutes, but I really want to learn more about you and how I can support you better as a manager. And I think these tools are pretty cool, right? The tone, the focus, the value proposition was there. It explained to this individual why it would make sense. Whereas if you were going into a boss who was a commander, I could see you going in and saying, hey there, I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I found something that I think could be vitally important to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of my work. And that is for me to understand better your communication style and how the workplace personas that you'd like me to use. I took this online class. It taught me these things. I think it could help us save time and money if I understood this better. Could we carve out some time and spend 10 or 15 minutes? So now it's less of that energy, but more of me talking about the bottom line and how important it is. And that sense of urgency and that focus on improving the business is just what that commander boss is going to want to hear. Now, on the empathizer side, that person's about relationships. So it's going to be an easier sell in the sense that you want to say, I found these really cool tools. It's supposed to help deepen our relationship as an employee and manager. And I would really like to do that. Do you think we could spend some time going over those? Pretty straightforward. And then with the contemplator, again, similar to the commander, you're going to focus more on the facts. You're going to go in and say, probably not even go in and see them, maybe write it up in an email and message the commander via email. I was wondering if we could, contemplator. I was wondering if we could get together. I found these very useful guides. It would take about 15 minutes of our time. It's an opportunity for me to understand your preferred communication style and way that you want me to do this job. And I would be able to track the results for you. And I think get us a better level of productivity. Would this be something we could explore? So again, you're being tactful, you're being polite, you're sending it through email so they have time to read it and process it and giving them that opportunity to buy into the idea. So once again, it's all in the communication style. And I think if you can do that, you can sell this to anyone. Trust me, most managers really appreciate it. All right, Christian on LinkedIn says, how are understanding communication styles useful during interviews? Can quick assessments be done? What if we're wrong? Yes, Christian, that's a whole topic in itself. You absolutely can do quick assessments to figure out what kind of person they are. And a lot of it's going to come down to their use of body language, hand gestures, voice tone, eye contact, pace of their voice, right? So let's do a quick assessment. Let's see, you guys can all test. If I was in an interview and I was talking to you like this, and I was asking you some questions, and I was taking time to pause and really think about your answers, what style would I be? Hopefully you're saying contemplator. Whereas if I was like, it's so nice to meet you. I'm very excited you're here today. We have a lot to cover and this is an incredible opportunity. What I want to go over with you today is how you can knock this job out of the park and be the most successful that you can possibly be. Energizer, right? How are you? I'm so glad that you came and met with us today. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why are you looking to work here? You know, this is a great environment. We're all very close. It's like family here. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Empathizer. And then the other one is, okay, so I have 10 questions. We are on a time schedule today. I've got about 30 minutes. So I really want to go through these with you. It's my job to understand if you will be able to do this job and fit the criteria. So let's get down to business. Commander. So the voice tone, facial expressions, pace, all of that, you can start to pretty quickly figure that out. One other thing I'll tell you is that if you're interviewing with people, and it doesn't really apply right now because of all the virtual interviewing, but in the past, if you went into somebody's physical office, you tend to be able to figure it out too, right? The empathizer has a lot of like handmade paintings and crafts and tchotchkes and things like that. The energizer tends to have a lot of awards and motivational quotes and things like that that visually inspire. The contemplator's desk is neat and perfect and organized and very visually calming. And the commanders, a lot of times you're like, oh, did you just move in? And they're like, no, I've been here 2 years, right? Commanders, there's just not a lot of frill, probably not all that well organized. They're just doing their work. So there's visual ways for you to pick up on that as well. All right, Deborah over on YouTube is asking, how do you work with someone who has a different personality all the time? Yeah, it's a tough one, Deborah. So if it's your polar opposite, my advice is for you to have a conversation and really bring to light how the two of you are different. One of the best ways to bond better is to understand how your coworkers are different than you. And this can be an exercise. I've had entire organizations come online, take the quiz, and then talk about it. The important thing is that you understand that you're doing this for good, not evil. All the styles are important. All of them are relevant. All of them have their own strengths. You just need to see how you communicate differently and say, if we both care about each other and we want to do a good job together here, then we need to understand each other's styles and how we can help one another. And that's really the key, is getting buy-in from your coworker and saying, I think we want to be able to work together and we clearly have different styles. Let's do this and figure out what are the 2 or 3 ways we can help each other. What are 2 or 3 things that I can do that will make you feel better, and vice versa. And if you can have that conversation, it's really amazing results. You can build incredibly strong bonds with your polar opposite. You know, I've seen dynamic duos who are complete opposites, but because they understood each other's strengths, they'd be like, okay, you handle that because your communication style is better there, whereas my communication style is better over here, right? But that doesn't happen until the 2 of you have a really honest conversation about it. Okay, Eugene over on YouTube is asking, what if a manager is constantly shifting what they expect from you? Sometimes it might seem like you're constantly pursuing a moving target. Oh, that's a great question. It's very possible, if that's the case, that manager is an energizer or a commander. They're moving at a quick pace and they're constantly pivoting. Very typical. And my guess is that you're probably the opposite. So you don't enjoy that. That feels confusing to you. It feels frustrating to you. I would say that, one, you can try to work with your boss and say, you know, I really want to be able to do a good job for you. And I know part of that is we have to constantly be able to adapt. How do I set expectations? Because I'm more of a want to get it done and knock it out of the park person. And it disrupts my mindset. What can we do to work together so that, you know, when we have to shift, I'm not feeling flustered, you know, that sort of thing. And a lot of times what you find out is that you've got these crazy expectations that you think your boss expects all these things from you, but keeps the moving target. And what you'll find out is that your boss is like, no, I don't expect that from you. I know that I'm creating a moving target. Or maybe your boss is like, oh, wow, I don't think I realized I was doing that. You know, it's very typical in startup culture, startup businesses, for that to happen, just so you know. Whereas in big, larger, well-established companies, it tends not to happen. So some people thrive in the startup world where every day is different, others do not. And if that's the case and you don't think there's something you can do there, then honestly, you want to start thinking about looking for a different environment, because it's long-term, that's not going to help you if you can't adapt, for sure. All right, Haley on LinkedIn is asking, how can I help cultivate an environment of learning for the managers I work with? Managers often come to me wanting to move up, and often there are soft skill gaps. Oh, I love this question. So Haley, when you talk about soft skill gaps, the mere fact, Haley, that you can recognize the soft skill gaps in other people is huge. It's really huge. What I would do is put together an inventory of skill sets that you know are needed, both hard and soft skills. But, you know, maybe if you want to just talk about the soft skills and say, look, I know that to move up in this environment, these are the top 10 soft skills. I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of how effective you think you are in all of these skills. So you have them do that and you say, all right, would you give me permission to rate you based on what I've seen? So, and then you're going to rate, and obviously you're going to rate lower in certain areas where you know the gap is. So this is going to create an interesting dynamic because this person's going to go, maybe they rated themselves low too, in which case it's an easy conversation. Okay, we're both in agreement this soft skill needs some work. Let's work on it. But maybe you find out this person gave themselves a 5 and you gave them a 1. So now you want to say to them, hey, we don't actually sync up here. Let's explore that. What made you give yourself a 5? What traits do you think you exemplify that give you a 5 that maybe I haven't seen? Because here's what I'm not seeing. And so let's work on a strategy to update those skills. This is just a wonderful, logical, more factual way to have this conversation with them. And I would definitely do that because it helps people to know how they're being perceived and where they're being seen as lacking and this is such a polite way for them to be able to understand that, so that you can say, look, hey, maybe you have that soft skill, but you need to know, as me watching you up until now, I'm not seeing it. So how about we talk together about how you can display that soft skill more so it can be seen by other people? Because if I'm not seeing it, everybody else isn't seeing it either, right? So it's a very nice way to do that. All right, Lisa on LinkedIn says, which communication style is opposite from energizer? The opposite is a contemplator. So best way to describe it, I always talk about this, that when a contemplator is with an energizer, a contemplator's like just looking around. They don't even hear anything because they're so distracted by the hand gestures and the body language and the fast tone. It's like a tidal wave coming at a contemplator. It's visually overwhelming. It's too much stimulation. So they need to kind of take it all in and go back and take a deep breath. Well, while they're doing that, they shut down. So they don't have they kind of have that resting face, big eyes, no comment. They can't say anything because they can't think fast enough. So that's frustrating to the energizer, because the energizer wants to feed off your energy, is putting out all this energy and wants to see it impacting the person. And it's not. It's almost like the contemplator's just taking it in and dragging them down. So I've often heard energizers say, oh, it was like pulling teeth to get that person to talk. They just had no emotion. They were like so, aloof and unenthused. And it was really frustrating, when in reality, the contemplator was very interested. They just couldn't handle it all, So those opposites have to do, again, with pace and, that directness factor. All right. So over on YouTube, the question is, as an empathizer and super connector, what are some ways or habits to have to be considered for managerial roles or even prep to be an entrepreneur? That's a great question. So the gifts of an empathizer super connector is that you really can put yourself in other people's shoes. You have this uncanny knack for imagining what that person is going through and connecting with them based on that. Those are wonderful traits to have. The challenge will be that a lot of entrepreneurial roles and leadership roles require you to disappoint people, right? And make decisions that have to be fiscally sound for the business and less about the people. So it can be difficult, right? Because you want to keep a business in business. You have to be able to make a lot of business decisions. A lot of that stuff is done all by yourself. It doesn't involve super connecting, and it doesn't involve people's emotions and building those relationships and making them feel good and understanding them. It's about business, doing the business. So my advice is to really take some business courses and some decision-making courses so that you can start to educate yourself on the right types of decisions you're going to need to make, because you're going to have to, from a values standpoint, you're going to have to get comfortable making decisions that are time crunched, that you don't have all the information, and that are absolutely positively going to disappoint somebody and make them not happy. And until you can get comfortable with that, it'll be a problem. So taking some courses and practicing in sound decision-making will help you make peace with that. It won't always be easy, but it will become easier. And it's a critical part to being successful, especially as a manager or an entrepreneur. All right. Elise over on YouTube says, how come I'm asking for extra responsibilities from my boss, but he always tells me I'm already overloaded. He gives these responsibilities to other people. Oh, okay. So Elisa, that tells me that your boss is feeling that your workplace personas, how you're doing the work, is not the way your boss wants it. So you need to go have a conversation with your boss. You want to sit down with your boss and say, I really want to exceed your expectations. That's my goal as a worker. And I noticed that you don't feel comfortable giving me extra responsibilities because you said you feel that I'm overworked. Can you tell me, like, I'm overloaded? Can you tell me what I'm doing that's giving you that impression? Because I don't want to give you that impression. I don't want you to think I am overloaded. I want you to feel that I have got this under control and I've got the bandwidth to take on more responsibility. So what am I doing that's giving that impression? And what can I do to improve that for you? That honest and open communication, that is managing up at its finest. If that's what your boss is saying to you, then your boss is observing behaviors in you that are giving that opinion. Until you figure out what those behaviors are and how you can minimize them or change them so that your boss has more confidence, nothing will happen here. You will not fix the situation. So I'm happy for you, Elisa. At least your boss is giving you that feedback, that means your boss is also willing to help fix it. And that's key. That's critical. Wonderful. Okay, James on LinkedIn is asking, boss wants you to take on something, says he will train you, but never does, then blames you for not taking these things on. That's a great question. So here's one thing, and I probably should have made a note. Whenever you are taking something off somebody's plate, you have to be ready to train yourself. So remember, if you're taking off the boss's plate, imagine your boss isn't going to be able to train you, isn't going to be able to give you the time. They're too busy. The best way for you to take on those headaches is to also take on the headache of figuring it out for yourself. So don't make the assumption, even if your boss says, I'll train you, assume your boss doesn't have time to train you and ask yourself, how can I get the information I need? Who else can I go to? How can I put together training for myself? How can I self-teach? That will go so far with your boss because that shows real resourcefulness on your part. And then your boss is going to realize, wow, I can give this person other things and they're going to figure it out for themselves. And you become very, very invaluable. So the answer is don't assume. Figure it out for yourself, most definitely. All right, question over on LinkedIn. If you join any new firm as a manager, there you found all the team members are under pressure from the old senior staff and not interested to work with new ideas. They work with the old orthodox method. How do you deal with the team and management? Oh, that's a really great question. So whenever you step into a new management role, it's very typical for the existing staff to want to resist change and not want to do it the new ways. So you have to have some honest conversations around that. You have to sit down and say, I think we need new change and I have some ideas, but I feel the pushback that you all want to stay with the old way. So I want you to show me how the old way is saving or making enough money that it would outperform the new way. Tell me why you think it's better, because I wouldn't be proposing these new ways as a boss if I didn't think it was going to help us somehow on the bottom line. We're going to save time, we're going to save money, or we're going to make more money. I'm not proposing these just to throw change at you. I'm doing it because I think we can work smarter, not harder. But I respect that you've all been here longer than me. So if there's some reason why you feel these new attempts, these new ideas aren't going to be more effective, then you need to tell me why your way, the older way, is. What you're going to find is that people just don't want to learn something new. And so they can't say that, can they? When you ask them for this and say, tell me, they can't say, well, we just don't want to learn something new. And if they do, you can say, that's not a reason. Not learning something new is not a reason. We're here as a business to constantly improve. If a business isn't growing, it's dying. And that means we can't always keep it the old way. We have to come up with new ways. Now, I can come up with these new ways and force everybody to do this and make it uncomfortable, or we can work on this together. But no matter what, we all need to leave here in agreement that we're going to come up with some new, more efficient ways. Doesn't necessarily have to be the ways I came up with, but what is for sure is we're not sticking with the old ways. So the old ways are going. I need all of you to be part of the solution so that we can do something new and more efficient. And let's take it one step at a time, one project at a time. And before you know it, we'll all be really good at this. But that's the conversation you need to have with these people. You need to help them understand that you're not introducing new ways to make everybody's life more difficult. That's how they feel and they don't want to take on new things, but they can be part of the solution. They can help you find a new, faster, better way to do this. And they should want to in order to move forward. Okay? Wonderful. Hey, listen, I need to ask a humongous favor. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Need a favor. This week, we launched Work It Daily on a site called Product Hunt. And I know a lot of people are Product Hunt junkies, and we're putting the link to it right now. We need your upvote. All you have to do is go over there and upvote. We really need your upvote. Just vote for Work It Daily as one of the new products on the site. We'd be so grateful. There's nothing else you have to do. Just go over to Product Hunt, hit the link. Please, if you like today's session, if you've been enjoying the live sessions that we do 2 times a week, we would all be so grateful. My team put a lot of effort into this, into getting us on Product Hunt, and we have 1 week to be on there and to upvote. So we would be so incredibly grateful. Can you just go over, take 2 seconds, upvote us on Product Hunt? That would be amazing. Okay. Thank you, team, for doing that. Don't forget to take the free quizzes. I hope you found today's session really helpful. I'll be back again next week. Remember, we're live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. And special thing that I'm completely nerding out on, tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, I am going to be Andrew Siemens from LinkedIn's guest on his Get Hired show. So really excited. He is like the premier journalist over at LinkedIn that's covering all things on hiring right now during the crisis. He's got his own show called Get Hired at 1 p.m. on Fridays, and I get to be his guest tomorrow. So be sure to head on over and sign up for that. I would love for all of the JT Talks Jobs attendees to come over and attend that and cheer Andrew on as well, because his stuff is truly, truly fantastic. So 1 p.m. tomorrow, come on over and hang out with me and Andrew. Upvote on Product Hunt. And then I will see you again next week, 2 p.m. Eastern. And just one last thing. Thank you, everyone. It is a joy and an honor to get to do these every single week. I pinch myself. The team and I are so happy to be providing free career advice. It's all your amazing ideas and comments and feedback. That's where we get the ideas for these shows. So keep them coming. And just thank you for taking time out of your day to come over here and hang out with us, okay? All right, everyone. Stay safe and healthy. And I'll see you next time. Because remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily.